Some movies really just define a generation, right? But what's incredible is when one of those movies is born from almost total rejection. We're going to talk about a film that just shattered every single expectation. A low-budget sci-fi thriller that somehow became a cultural landmark. This isn't just the story of a movie. It's the unbelievable tale of how the Terminator had to fight for its very existence. So, get this. This is what the studio thought of the movie. Not a potential blockbuster, not a sci-fi classic. They called it an exploitation film. You know, something cheap, a little trashy, made for a quick buck, and then designed to be completely forgotten. That's how much faith they had in this thing. So that's the big question, isn't it? How does a movie that its own distributor basically wanted to bury rise up to redefine a whole genre and launch the careers of absolute legends? Well, let me tell you. The story behind the camera is even crazier than the one on screen. It all starts where so many of these great stories do, with one person, one powerful idea, and a creator who just refused to let it go, no matter what it cost him. Okay, so picture it. 1982. A young director named James Cameron, who's really only worked on B-movies, has this killer vision of an unstoppable robot assassin from the future. He knows it's something special, but when he pitches it to his own agent, the agent tells him to forget about this nonsense and move on. But here's the thing about Cameron. His belief was just unshakable. He had one rule. He wouldn't sell the script unless he was the one directing it. For him, the idea and the execution were the same thing. And for a young filmmaker whose only real credit was a Piranha movie sequel, well, that was a total deal breaker for almost every studio in town. They loved the script, but hated the strings attached. So studio after studio slammed the door in his face. But then, in walks Gail Ann Hurd. Now she was just like Cameron. She'd come up in the scrappy, make-it-work world of low-budget filmmaking. She knew how to stretch a dollar, and more importantly, she saw the pure brilliance in what Cameron was pitching. She was the first person with real power to actually believe in him. And how much did she pay for the rights to this future billion-dollar franchise? $1. Just one single dollar. It's now a Hollywood legend. Hurd bought the script for $1, with one critical condition. James Cameron had to direct. It was the move that literally launched his entire career, but it also meant he signed away his rights to a goldmine. All right, so they've got a director and a budget held together by hope and sheer will. The next massive hurdle was finding the right actors for this futuristic nightmare. And oh boy, this is where the story takes another incredible, almost accidental turn. So the studio, Orion Pictures, they had their own ideas. They looked at the biggest bodybuilder in the world, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and thought, perfect hero. They wanted him for the good guy, Kyle Reese. Cameron honestly thought the idea was kind of lame, but he agreed to meet Arnold for lunch. And it was over that lunch, just watching how intense Arnold was, that a light bulb just exploded in Cameron's head. He wasn't the hero. He was the villain. It was that perfect bingo moment that changed cinematic history. And get this, believe it or not, O.J. Simpson was also in the running for the Terminator role. And the reason he was turned down is just darkly ironic looking back. The studio felt his public persona was so friendly and likable that there was no way anyone would ever believe him as a cold-blooded killer. So the rest of the team started to click into place. Michael Biehn nearly fumbled his shot at playing Kyle Reese because he showed up to his audition with a thick Southern accent he couldn't shake from another job he'd just been at. And Linda Hamilton, she got the part of Sarah Connor because she had this amazing ability to seem like an ordinary waitress who you could absolutely believe would one day become this hardened warrior. So they had the cast, but they still only had that tiny $6 million budget. To bring Cameron's apocalyptic vision to life, they were going to have to get really, really creative. This is where the magic happens. This is where the legend Stan Winston enters the picture. He was a master of practical effects and makeup. His team was tasked with building the future, creating a terrifying cyborg, and staging these massive explosions, all without the money of a typical Hollywood blockbuster. This quote pretty much perfectly sums up the partnership between Cameron and Winston. See, Cameron wasn't a hands-off director at all. He gave Winston these incredibly detailed sketches for every single piece of the Terminator, from its metal skeleton to its robotic hand. As Winston later joked, Cameron basically designed the whole thing, and he just got to take all the credit for it. And that kind of problem-solving was just constant. Take the huge tanker explosion at the end. You can't just blow up a real truck in downtown Los Angeles. So what do? They build a perfect 1/6 scale miniature. But on the first take, a cable snaps the axle. A total disaster, and a really expensive one. But they didn't quit. They rebuilt it, and 2 days later, they nailed one of the most iconic shots in action movie history. And that practical genius wasn't just for the big stuff. It went all the way down to the code inside the Terminator's head. Those classic red lines of text we see from his point of view? That entire display was programmed using the same processor chip you would find in an Apple II home computer. It's kind of wild to think about. So, after all the struggles and the on-set ingenuity, the movie was finally done, but the battle was a long way from over. Now, they had to convince the studio that they had made something way more than just another B-movie. I mean, this quote is just staggering. The head of the entire studio literally told James Cameron that his movie, about a time-traveling killer robot from the future, was not a sci-fi film. They were so convinced it was going to get horrible reviews that they barely marketed it at all. They held only one press screening, basically hoping it would just disappear without a trace. But then a really funny thing happened. The few critics who did see it didn't just like it, they went nuts for it. The positive reviews started pouring in from everywhere. The LA Times, the New York Times, Newsweek was raving about it. And then came the ultimate validation. Time magazine named it one of the 10 best films of the entire year. The movie the studio tried to hide was suddenly an acclaimed masterpiece. And you know what? The audience agreed. On that tiny $6 million budget, the Terminator brought in nearly $80 million at the box office worldwide. It wasn't just a critical darling. It was a certified commercial smash hit that proved every single person at the studio wrong. And its influence just kept growing after that. It became a titan on VHS, finding an even bigger audience at home. Now, the journey wasn't perfect. There was a plagiarism lawsuit from sci-fi author Harlan Ellison that led to a settlement and an on-screen credit for him. But its place in history was cemented in 2008 when it was added to the National Film Registry, officially preserved as a true American classic. And all of that leaves us with this one last thought. The story of the Terminator is just this amazing testament to having a vision and the persistence to see it through. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other unconventional, down and dirty ideas are being rejected right now, just waiting for someone to take a $1 chance on them?